Hi and welcome to DCO. My name is David Copete. In today's video, I'll be sharing with you this design. What we do with this design is create two openings that have this smooth form. I will be showing you at the beginning how this form was created, showing you the steps, creating the arcs, subdividing it, and then creating this entire shape. You'll also see a time lapse of the development of the script into wall structure, outside materials, and all the details you see here. So if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below, or check out my website, copetidavid.com. There you can ask me questions, you can download the script so you can see how this was made, and I post videos every week, so if you stay updated, you can download these for free as they are released. So thank you very much for being here. My goal is to share with you guys parametric designs, tutorials, and techniques that you can apply to your own designs. So hopefully you're excited to get started, and let's jump right in. So the first thing we'll do is we'll bring in a point. So to create a point, we'll double click here and go to construct point. This creates a parametric point, and I also like to use a point component. This way we can change the location of the design. Now with this point, we can start and move it to create the radius of the design. So let's take that point. We'll go to a move component and move this point in the X direction. So I'll bring in a unit X. And now I can create a slider so I can move this point in the X direction. So we'll create a custom slider of 0, less than 15, less than 50. That creates a custom slider from 0 to 50 and sets it at 15. Next, we're going to be creating this opening. So what we need to do is rotate this point both in the positive and negative direction. So we'll bring in a rotate. Use the point as a plane input, and then use this geometry as the geometry input. The important thing to do here is to right click here on angle, change it to degrees, and now we can create a slider to create the opening. Now this is going to be only 1/2, so it's technically twice as much for the opening, but let's start with a slider. So we'll be moving this by 15.5 in the positive or clockwise. And now we'll be doing the same thing. So slide it down, tap Alt, and now we'll be using that number, but in the negative direction. So 21.7, turning it into a negative and using that. So technically we have 21.7 and 21.7. We can divide this by 2 to get the true angle between the first and the last one. So we'll take this to divide by 2. This is going to be opening angle. This will be structure radius. And I am grouping it, and I changed the color to be black here, but here's the thing. The reason why it looks like this is because I'm using Moonlight, which is a plugin that I downloaded. We can enable it by going to setting the Boolean to true, and then this is how I enabled it. Obviously this is something that you need to install outside, but just wanted to make sure you guys are aware of that. All right, so now that we've rotated these 2 points and have this point, the original point, we're going to be creating an arc with 3 points. The midpoint is going to be point B, and then A and C are going to be the points we rotated. This creates the opening or the curve that sets the base geometry for the opening. And the logic, how it works here is we have the radius, then we have the angle, and now what we need to do is take this arc and rotate it all the way around. So let's bring in a rotate component. Again, we can also copy one, use the midpoint or the starting point as a plane input, and now let's plug in the arc as the geometry, and the angle, you don't necessarily have to turn it into degrees. You can also go here to radians, which means that it'll take your degree and turn it into radians. So if I wanted it to be rotated 180 degrees, we can use degrees and turn it to radians. So we don't have to right click here, just showing you two different ways of doing it. All right, so at this stage, now we have these arcs that are opposite of each other, created the same way, but now we need to create the arc in between that is left over. So what we're going to do is take this and bring in the endpoints. This will let us use these points and these points as the points to create the arc. So when we create a 3-point arc, we need the midpoint. So how would we get this point to this midpoint? Well, we can rotate it positive 90 and negative 90. So let's do that. Let's take this point and rotate it. Relative to the center point by 90. So we'll copy this. So in the same way that we do 90, we can do copy this down and do minus 90. So now we've set the stage, so we can take these endpoints and create the arcs. So let's start with the first arc 3 points, and then we'll start by here, starting with the start point. Then we're going to go to the midpoint, which is the rotated point. And then the last one is going to be starting here and then ending this one. Starting here, ending here, and here. And now we can take this and rotate it 180, or we can create that, use this point. Technically it's the same thing, so we can bring this over here and just rotate it. And this angle is going to be 180. So now we have these two arcs. The original arc, and then so by separating these, now we're going to be taking one of these openings. Opening angle, we'll just go here to 45. and use this to start creating the door. Alright, so what we do here is now we take this arc, we're going to divide it. So let's go here to divide curve. We'll use a number to create the number of subdivisions here. We'll just say 5. And we'll use this arc midpoint as the point attractor to bring this up. Okay, now that we have the midpoint, we're going to connect this point to every one of those points to get a variation in height. By connecting these 2 points and getting this line segment, now we can remap these numbers to create the heights. So let's go to bounds. And these are the ones that I use for remapping numbers, is remap numbers, bounds, and construct domain. Now we need 2 numbers, a minimum and a maximum. So let's go here, we'll go 1 less than 15 less than 25.00. And all we need is a larger number and a smaller number. Now we take these map numbers and we'll move them up in the Z direction. And so we have 6 of these points that we are going to move up using this. And what we need to do is raise the start domain and bring this back to 0 so it starts at that point. Okay. Now we're going to use NURBS curve to create that arc. Now the degree, that's going to determine kind of the level of that it kind of rebuilds that curve, right? So now that we have this, now we need to rotate this all the way around like we did with this one. So we'll bring this all the way over because now we're going to be rotating this one. This one. So now we have these 2. And then we have these 2 at the end that connect together. So we can hide everything else other than that. And let's join those together. So let's go to join curve. And also this one. So when you hold down shift, it lets you add more than one input. So at this stage, we have now joined all of these curves into one closed curve. The only issue is this part where it doesn't necessarily, you can't round this off unless I haven't found another way of doing it. So let me show you the way that I've been doing it. We'll be dividing this curve using a count. Now, I like to use a large number, so we'll go 0, less than 100, less than 200. And once you have all those points along that curve, then we can use NURBS curve. And then the degree will determine how it rebuilds it. Whether it's like more or less. Notice that you also lose some height, so the true height that you had before kind of doesn't work as well. But the idea is that now you have a smooth form here that is open here. So let's go to set boolean to true, and let's move some of the sliders so you see how everything kind of goes together. This determines the angle of the opening. The radius. This one we're not going to change because it just rotates this to this side. Subdivisions for the door. This less subdivisions you have, the more rounded off it is, and like the more subdivisions you have, and more of a peak you create. So okay, this is going to determine the height. You won't want to change this bottom one because then it doesn't work. So this determines the opening height, the degree. So I'm going to relabel some of these. So if I see one that I don't want to move, I actually delete it, and then I just set a number to 90. Just little tricks like that, so you don't necessarily mess up the script. If you move a slider that is not supposed to be moved, and sometimes what happens is it actually blocks up your computer, so just be aware of those things. Let's go door rebuild. Door height. Like this, I can kind of delete that one and just go set number to 0. This one, we are going to do 180. And with this one. This is going to be rebuild form. And this is degree. So that concludes this portion of the tutorial. I want to show you how to create this entire form from the beginning, because you're going to be seeing the entire tutorial at the end, but I just wanted to share the process.